Welcome to GC Casual Fridays. We're here discussing today tactical steps to emerge strong from the market downturn. I'll be co-presenting. I'm the founder of In the House and also the co-managing director of CLIC, Corporate Legal Innovation Consultants. Nita Sanger is my partner in that consulting practice, and Nita and I will be co-presenting. And let me, without further ado, share the screen here, show the slides. So raise your hand if, let's see, can people, let's see. Oh, I see. Seem to be having a brief problem with the slide share. I haven't had this
So
issue
I think
before.
we need to do it, take the PowerPoint and do it as so show it like you would a presentation style. That's probably better.
Let me just see here. There you go. You see it? Thumbs up if you can see the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good. All right, so as I said, we're talking about the tactical steps to emerge strong from the downturn. We call it the ABCDE of structured legal innovation. You'll see why in a moment. Whoops.
Now we just see you, Chris.
I know. It's funny. I promise this usually goes much smoother. I don't know if Zoom has been changing some of their settings. Okay. Now we have the page one of the presentation. Yep. And let's start moving ahead because we've got about 40 minutes here to get through the material and cover Q&A. But I'll take the first one, Nita, and then maybe we'll alternate and we'll go forward.
Sure.
So obviously this is a time right now where it's important to emerge strong. We're about 2 months into this work from home environment for most in-house lawyers. We've sort of, I think most of us have gotten over the initial adjustment of working from home. Thank goodness we have a lot of great tools like video conferencing to help us through this process now. Would have been much more difficult 20 years ago. We've started to assess some of the financial impacts on our legal departments. And now, Nita and I think it's really time to start to think about what role can innovation play in emerging strong. We did a survey about a month ago of corporate legal departments, and there's some key takeaways, one of which is that the vast majority of corporate legal departments think there will be a mandate for some kind of cost reduction in their department. So it's going to be important to begin to adjust to this new normal and figure out how we're going to emerge strongly. So the 5 steps in the ABCDE are A, assess the current state of the corporate legal department, sort of take a 360 review of your department and see what do your current operations look like. Then build a legal innovation roadmap, which involves identifying sort of the difference between your current state and where you'd like to be in the new normal environment. C, communicate that plan and socialize that plan with your key stakeholders, such as the business units you work with, as well as the C-suite, and make sure that they are on board with the innovation roadmap. D, determine the right fit legal services and tech partners. As we all know, there's a greater variety of vendors available, not just traditional law firms, but law firms of many sizes, alternative legal service providers, a whole bunch of legal tech providers. How do you make sense of that universe? And how do you pick the right partners that fit your legal department? And finally, execute on that legal innovation roadmap, which is a rather iterative process and checkpoints to ensure a successful execution. We'll go through each of these in turn. So Nita, why don't you take folks through this slide?
So what I wanted to actually take one step back and actually say is that obviously as soon as the crisis started, the first thing people needed to do was to make sure that people were safe and everything was in order and people were able to do their work remotely. But now as we're getting past that, we're actually starting to see the leaders now need to start sort of thinking about, okay, so what is it going to look like? What's the new normal going to be once we come out of this? And also what's happened that as a result of what's going on in the market, and that's what we were discussing a little bit when people came on, there's a chance that your customers, their needs may have changed. The C-suite, which until now we were in the longest sort of bull market for the last 10 plus years. Now, given where the market is heading, they may need to sort of try to figure out what they need to do to be cost effective or cut down on the top and the bottom line. And so what we're saying is that now corporate legal departments need to actually take that step back and say, okay, what has changed? Are my customers still going to look for the same things that they did before the crisis, or would it look different going forward? Is my business, my C-suite and my business units, what are they going to need? And that means you're going to have to, and so what we're actually, and we've got lots of details behind this, and so happy to discuss this further with people, but the idea is take a look at overall and then look at your people, process, and technologies, because there's so many different alternatives that you have now that you did not have before. And so it's now to think about what else needs to be done. So this is saying GCs have done a lot, but there's more that work that needs to be done. Chris, the next slide.
Absolutely. So I'll start with
Yep.
this one, then Nita, you add your comments. So this is a little more detail on what we went through before, but it's really important to be concrete. And when you want to bring innovation, we really, Nita and I think it should not be done on an ad hoc basis. You shouldn't just bring in one legal tech solution and try to make that transform your department. It's important to do the technology actually last after you've defined the other needed changes in your legal department, and then you figure out where the technology fits in. So we call that building the legal innovation roadmap. That really involves, first of all, defining as best you can. Obviously, we're in a rapidly shifting environment, but just like other people and other business units, we need to start to think about what are our businesses, what are our departments going to look like in August, September, October, and how are they going to function? And then it's important to define the overall mission. I actually think, there are not a lot of silver linings in the current crisis, but I think one of them is we do have some more time. Maybe we're saving commute time, for example. The weekends are much less crowded for many of us. So take some time to really, if you have not done this yet, define an actual mission statement for your legal department. It may be related to the mission statement for your company, but it should be different also, and it should reflect the specific goals and aspirations of your legal department. I think that's a really good exercise to go through. And then also define those metrics you need to achieve that mission, that defined mission. It's sort of like the old saying from Alice in Wonderland from the Cheshire Cat, where are you going? Well, it depends. It depends a great deal on where your goal is. Where are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve? Then you look at three areas: processes, people, and technologies. And I think corporate legal departments, there's really a variety of, it's like a spectrum, right? Some corporate legal departments have already been heavily transformed. Some are closer to the beginning of that process. But either way, it's important to continually try to optimize those processes. It's a good time to examine human resources. A lot of new capabilities have come into the marketplace. Most legal departments are primarily W-2 employees, but there's a lot of opportunities for 1099 general contractors, even gig workers. Also a mix in terms of not only lawyers, maybe there should be operations experts in your legal department. Maybe there should be technologists within your department, because you may not have all the support you need from the COO or from the IT department. You may need some internal resources of your own to meet your unique mission. And then finally, as we indicated, technology actually comes last in this process, because now you've refined or defined your processes, your people, and then you figure out what are the technologies that are the best fit for this new normal environment. So, Nita, did you have comments on that slide? Sorry, I didn't.
No, the only thing that I would add is that obviously a lot of work has been done, but the thing now is to think about is that as you're doing the processes, do they need to look different? It's probably going to be a combination. Again, given the pressure that the GC, as you as a GC are going to face, is there things that you could do further? Are there some of the things that can be outsourced? Is there something that you can use a managed service provider? So I know that a lot of the general counsels and a lot of the corporate legal departments are using things like, they're using a bunch of technologies, but now is the chance to sort of say, is there things that we can do further? And then ultimately what we're saying is, when you're creating that roadmap, think of it that at the end, ultimately what you want is what we're calling like what the future of corporate legal department should look like. And probably we're saying it should probably look like something like, and Chris always says it, like Star Trek, where you have a single place to go to, which is on the desktop of each one of your lawyers, which will then have all the solutions at the back of it aligned with how you actually work. So the key to think about it is in that fashion, and then look at, okay, if you, how would your processes look? And then people, do you need them all to be in-house, or can you have, gig economy workers, etc.? So just wanted to add a little more color on that.
Absolutely. No, those are great points. Thanks, Nita.
Then the key thing is that anything that you're trying to do, the real value is to make sure you don't do it in isolation. Communication becomes key, because at the end of the day, anything that you're trying to change is very much about people. And people don't do very well with change, be it your people in your team, or be it, your leadership. So what becomes very important to actually have a communication plan. Figure out who are your stakeholders, what you need to say to them, what do you need from them, what kind of commitment. And it doesn't mean you need money from them or resources, but you might need a commitment that your leadership is okay with, or your the regulators and your legal bodies, that they know what you're doing. So the key is very clear. Socialize that with people, so you bring them along on the journey. And this is very, very important, because you'll find that the one or two people you don't bring along are probably the ones who are actually going to be the ones to say, well, this doesn't make sense, or these guys are doing it all wrong. So this is very, very critical.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The only thing I would add is I think there's a good career opportunity for general counsel right now to really step up as leaders. And I think crises test current leaders and they help new leaders emerge. That's very clear. Any kind of crisis does that. And I think this one's a unique opportunity for, I mean, quite frankly, general counsel can rebrand themselves and make sure that the C-suite and the business units really know that they're giving great service, that they're calm in a crisis. I actually think lawyers are very good at that. We tend to be calm in a crisis and think logically about the situation at hand and try to deal with it. So I recommend that type of approach as well. Think of this not only as a business transformation within your department, but a personal opportunity to rebrand and to emerge as a strong leader, or as a stronger leader, because I know you're already all strong leaders. And this is my slide, I guess. So I'll take a quick stab at this one. So
Right.
this looks very complicated. It is important to determine the right fit for all your providers, and I would think of providers globally, not only including law firms and alternative legal service providers, tech partners. So as hopefully this chart shows, the corporate legal department's at the center of this environment. One reason we say to do technology last is because of the dizzying array of tech solutions that are out there. So if you sort of pick one just because you saw them do a webcast, or because you got an email or something, that can be a very risky move, because you don't know that they'll be the right fit with your people, with your processes. So it's really important to take a deep dive, try to understand this sometimes bewildering new world we live in with all these different vendors now, but try to find the right fit. And that's just very, very important. And as some of you have probably learned, sometimes picking a bad fit tech vendor is worse than doing nothing. And so I think it's really important to do your homework, make sure you have people that you can rely on to help you make sense of this very complex environment, and then move forward once you've made a decision. And I would also recommend building in iterative processes. Legal departments aren't always used to doing RFPs, but you might want to consider doing them when you have a very specific problem. If nothing else, you can make, it's kind of nice putting vendors, and by the way, I'd include law firms in this, put them through a dog and pony show, because you'll learn a lot from the dog and pony show, regardless of who you hire. And so put them through their paces, especially now, because people, frankly, might be scrambling for business and might be willing to really share some key value with you even before being hired. So those are some of the recommendations I have, is think a little bit like other business people do when they're faced with a confusing array of vendors. So Nita, please add your thoughts as well.
So the couple of thoughts that I have on this is, one thing to remember is that technology is never done in isolation. So this all needs to be done in the backdrop of what's happening within your firm. So if your firm is using certain technology, certain platforms, that is so important that whatever you do gets aligned with the bigger technology within your firm. Then the second piece of this is that as you're picking vendors, we have one of the articles which is like, how do you pick the right vendor for you? Also, the other thing is, as you're picking someone, make sure that you think about what this solution is like. How does it work with the other solutions that you have within, which are being used just within your corporate legal department? I'll just give you an example in terms of billing. And we just take a couple of the examples. Some people will just do how they help you write the bills. Other people will help you, actually do some analytics around whether you would charge right. And a third person might actually help you get the money from your lawyers or any
Bless
vendors
you.
that you use. You need to make sure that all these solutions have the ability to work with each other. Because if you remember when we started with that ecosystem, when I said, so now it's becoming more and more important that people have solutions that can work with the other solutions that you're using. So two parts. One, make sure it's aligned with everything that you're doing within your firm, because this is not going to sit in isolation of anything else that you're using. And the second, that they can actually work with the other solutions that you have.
Absolutely. So back to that Star Trek Enterprise,
Mm.
Captain Kirk may be running the show, but Sulu and Uhura and Chekhov, they all need to work nicely together and form a cohesive team. And your vendors are part of your team. They may
Mm.
be outside of the corporate structure, but they have to be considered one of the players on your team, and they have to work well with the other team members, be they inside or outside of your organization. And then Nita, Nita, you take this one. This is the last slide, and then we'll transition to a Q&A from
Sure.
anybody who wants to get
So
involved.
what we wanted to say was, and this is what Chris kind of started off with, that actually when you're doing innovation, it's a complex, iterative process. And it's going to require investments in time, money, and resources. So all the steps that we laid out till now is, first, know where you're going. Then once you know that, you basically map it out as clearly as you can. Then you bring people along on the journey, because you're going to need the commitment from all the various people. Pick the right partners. But then even as you're then going to start actually adopting certain technologies or processes, you're going to have to test them out, because there's no way one would recommend that just, you have a solution, you take it and you put it and it actually crashes and actually slows you down. So which is why what you need to do is you need to design what you're going to try to, what is the new process going to look like? Then test it out. You might find 2 or 3 solutions which might sound good, and do a quick testing, iterate, create what it's going to look like, prototype it, test it out, and you may realize some things need to be changed. Once you do that, then say, okay, I'm spending X. Am I getting the returns from that X that I expected? Is it really adding the value that I thought? Am I getting the efficiency? Am I getting the effectiveness? And am I spending more than I'm getting out of it? And then once you've done all of that, and as you keep on sort of iterating, finally it's going to be, okay, this works. And then you say, now I'm going to start using it. And maybe even when you start using it, you might first have to use both sort of parallel processes where you pick that one. So what I'm trying to say is that to actually take even the roadmap, creating it easy to actually execute is a fairly lengthy process. And it's going to require, there's like the time and the money and the resources, because this can take a time, and which is why you need to make sure you've got your leadership behind you on this. But that's what I'd like to add.
Absolutely. Just my only concluding thoughts would be twofold. One is, when you're doing this rather complex execution process, keep your mind on that mission you defined way back at the beginning. You may even tweak the mission you find, and that's part of the iteration, but you want to make sure that this entire process is serving that mission that you've defined. And that's really important, to keep your eyes on the goal line there. The
Yep.
second thought I have is, General Counsel and other in-house counsel, at core, we're risk managers, so we're sensitive to risk. No project comes without risk, and certainly
Mm.
legal innovation includes some risk, because you're moving from a perceived safe spot to a spot of change, and that can make many lawyers nervous. But we actually think the current environment is one in which, number one, risk will be necessary, because we're in a very unstable environment. And standing still could perhaps be the most dangerous thing to do. It's really important to be able to be ready to innovate. The other thing is, if you don't innovate, innovation may be done to you rather than by you. And so I think everyone could agree it's better to disrupt your own operations to some extent, but in a controlled way, rather than be faced with potentially uncontrolled disruption coming from on high or from other stakeholders in the corporate community. So, so let's wrap up the slides now and just go to a Q&A session. I'd also love to hear from any of you about your own experiences with legal innovation within your own departments.
Sure. And happy to answer any questions you may have. We've got lots more information behind it, but we try to keep it as simple as possible.
Absolutely, and we schedule these for 50 minutes, but at least I'm available to go right up to the top of the hour if other folks are. Any thoughts, questions, etc.?
This is a great topic. Thank you so much for having me. And one of the things that I love about this is so many lawyers in particular, because that's what we know. So I'll go to that. But I think everyone has a fear of innovation, right? They don't want to change because they're stuck on their own in their own area. And I think the important thing is to explain that you can't, nothing's going to stay the same. If you stay the same, you're going to be not engaged in best practices and open yourself up to liability. Also, it gets easier once you learn these simple procedures and done them twice. Then you're an expert.
Exactly.
Thank you. And just wanted to add to
Go
that
ahead.
is,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to that is that this has been done in other professional services businesses, and that's kind of where my experience came in. I've done this for audit, for risk advisory, for other places. So this is not, I know it's kind of scary, but this has been done before and done successfully. So here's a chance to take some best practice from others and bring it in here.
Yes,
and I don't profess to be someone who's a quick adopter. Shahab, who Chris has worked with me, just loves this stuff and eats it up, and it's infectious. But not. I don't dive in. But thank you so much. This is fascinating, and I'm always looking to be better.
Absolutely. Well, picking up on both Gary and Nita's comments, one thing that I've seen is even already in this environment, we're all kind of swimming in risk right now. So taking a little chance on rejiggering your operations, it's actually kind of a safe time to do that in a strange way, right? Because so much is happening that you almost have a platform for change now that you might not have had before the crisis. So try to take the good with the bad, I guess. Any other thoughts and any other stories that people are willing to share about their own sort of journeys of innovation in their practice? No? Questions? It's a quiet group today.
Chris, I have a question, if that's okay.
Of course.
This is for everybody, whoever would like to opine on this. As I mentioned earlier, I work mostly with law firms, and one of the things I try to tell them is to try to really understand what your clients need and what your clients are trying to achieve. And I'm just curious as to whether or not you believe that this is a time that law firms or outside lawyers can be helpful to you. And if yes, are they being helpful to you? I was just curious.
Good question.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Especially with a lot of the courts and land records and other things closed. It's funny how many people have perceived time on their hands. And so I'm finding that people are very accommodating and very willing to help those of us who are still very busy and active at work, and in fact, even more busy. So I think it's a time where folks are reaching out to each other, and I'm an active participant in the ABA, and we've gotten creative about, we can't meet in person, but we're still meeting and having sessions and talking and collaborating. So I think it's a time where we could really use each other, just
Excellent.
personally.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yolanda, I have thoughts on that question, so I'll share it, and then whoever else wants to join in. I actually think of it as kind of another layer in the chain. So just like corporate legal departments need to innovate in order to make sure that the C-suite views them as going with the program, thinking about the future, and displaying their leadership, I actually think you just go a further rung down when you're dealing with the law firms. I think really smart law firms will innovate before their in-house counsel clients force them to innovate, because that is coming. And it's coming whether you like it or not if you're an outside law firm. So my strong recommendation to all outside law firms is to make sure that their practices are, number one, very efficient. Clients are really going to want efficiency right now. And number two, driven by the client's business objectives. The last thing you want to try to do right now is sort of maximize billable hours at your client's expense, because you will soon not have a client any longer if you do that. And there's going to be a lot of choices, right? Because the law, it's going to be competitive fighting over the remaining legal business, because a lot of litigation's way down, I've seen, and other areas are down, M&A's way down. So just like corporate legal departments need to reinvent themselves, I think smart law firms will do at least a light reinvention, if not a major reinvention. That's my own perspective.
And can I just add one thing? What's also happening is now people are seeing that there's a gap here. So in fact, one of the legal tech firms that we're talking to is actually creating an ecosystem for small to mid-tier law firms to actually come together to market to clients, which means they have created the marketplace, which means you as a corporate legal department go to the marketplace and you'll get access to like thousands of lawyers who will then put in what their skills are. So if you're looking for a particular specialty, so what also the thing is, if law firms do not actually evolve, then these marketplaces are going to come up where then somebody can go to them and figure out the best what they can get. So I think it's and that's why I think it's very important, like what Chris said, that the law firms have to make sure that they stay a step ahead.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, it's probably not the best analogy, but it's almost like, remember we used to buy CDs and albums? You know, I think that the big law firms in some ways are kind of like buying a whole CD. You know, CD has, you know, corporate on it, it has IP, it's got litigation, but people are going to want the songs now. They can buy disaggregated firms at really good firms that are smaller and high quality. And I think, again, that perception of risk will matter less. I think people primarily used to hire, I'm not criticizing large law firms, they bring tremendous value to the right matters, but for smaller matters, they may not be the right fit. And there are specialty firms that are very good.
As a small firm, I could say that I make this opportunity to really build relationships with my clients. They're mostly small businesses. I have a few larger clients, but really focusing on the small players that don't have the internal structure. So really bringing in the business experience I had from being 20 plus years in-house and helping them. I've been putting together summary memos on rent relief considerations and how to approach their landlords and things that they can act on themselves if they want to, or things that I can get involved with, really just helping them hold their hand, helping them really frame the questions that they have to ask. And then if they want to, helping them figure out what those answers are and setting the goals and the process. But on OSHA, on force majeure issues, insurance, business interruption issues, how do they approach it? What do they need to look at? And I've been and the stimulus packages and PPP and all of that, as all that stuff's been coming up, I've been sending out memos to my clients. I even set up a Q&A on Zoom for my clients with a loan specialist to answer all their questions on the PPP and the EIDL. Doing those kinds of things, just letting them know that we're here as a partner. And I think a lot of law firms are probably taking those same steps.
Yeah, definitely. I do think some of the smaller firms are more innovative because they have to be, right? It's the way it's their competitive advantage to be more innovative and to take more risks than some of the larger firms. Any other thoughts? Anybody else having, either answering Yolanda's question about interactions between the legal department and law firms, or more generally, what's happening in your in-house practice and what kind of innovations you're taking a look at? Obviously, no, I don't need any private, I don't want any private details of what your legal operations, but just in general, what kinds of experiences have you had with say, new technologies or new operating procedures? Any thoughts? We still have
Hey,
5
Chris,
minutes left. Yeah, hi, David.
I've seen, you know, in this current environment with the pandemic and sort of an economic crisis, that's become the, you know, the topic du jour of a lot of law firms interacting with their general counsel. And it seems like, I mean, a lot of them are trying to be of assistance. They see that as the acute need of companies, sort of how to get past this, you know, these difficult economic times. And so I see that as kind of a real current service that they're seeking that law firms are seeking to provide to their corporate clients, and some of the advice has been really terrific, and some of the services, some of them have like full-blown like websites and areas and research and really terrific guidance on the, for instance, loans and government programs that are available, and sort of the important strategies in deciding whether to go one way, like with PPP, and then there's another way with another sort of loan program, and what are the considerations, and which one can you get more money from, which one has more forgiveness that you don't have to pay back for payroll costs, and so it's not really technology, and as much as just this seems to be the important service right now that a lot of law firms, and I think a lot of general counsels are looking at, to be of service to their clients.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, what I've seen is you certainly, if you're a law firm, you don't want to be sending like a Me Too email about COVID-19, because we all get 50,000 of those a day. So, but you need to be substantive and helpful, and look at it from the GC's perspective. So hopefully at least some law firms are understanding their audience and catering to it appropriately, and providing actionable information, and not just sort of just joining the party just because a lot of other people are doing it. So sounds like you found some good ones, David. So that's good. Yeah, excellent. So we just have a few more minutes. We got 3 more minutes. Happy to open it to any other questions, comments, etc.
I'm going to take advantage of trying
Yes.
to fly, folks, and I'm going to be looking at. I have just this year joined my company, so I am new to our department, but literally am looking at a lot of historically paper records,
Yes.
including corporate organizational records, which I definitely want to digitize. And so if folks have suggestions, experiences, I'm obviously going to be taking full advantage of the briefing that you guys put together today in terms of mapping what I want and what I need. But just curious about others that may have had experiences, or even recent experiences, or horror stories in this area. All are welcome, obviously. Not only send me messages, but if you want to share now.
Absolutely. And does anyone have any specific experience with that in the terms of the digitization of the old paper records, and recommend any approaches? No, not right now. Okay. Well, I'm happy to reach out to me, Patricia, and I'll see, Nita and I can see if we can help. So just to wrap up the session, hopefully this material was useful. Nita and I are offering a 45-minute free consultation through CLIC Consulting. So if you go to click.consulting, CLIC, okay, click.consulting, you could sign up for that. It'll give you a calendar. You could schedule a time, and the two of us will try to take a deeper dive with you and see if there's thoughts we have in terms of how to make those processes more efficient. So we're very happy to help with that as much as possible. But thanks, everybody. Nita, you were great. Thank you so much. Great insights. Thank you for everyone's participation. We do these events every Friday at noon Eastern time. So we welcome all general counsel and associate general counsel to get involved. So you can check us out at inthehouse.org. We welcome people to join our community. The dues are very low. Sometimes I say embarrassingly low, but we're just trying to get people into the tent and participating and interacting with each other. So thanks,
Can I just add something before you sign off? If any of you is interested and are willing to share some of the stuff that you've done with the rest of the network, then we would be happy. And we're kind of doing this to maybe have like a 5-minute sort of video chat with you, which we'd like to share with the broader community, so that people can benefit. Those who are not able to make the call can benefit from your experience and what you've seen. So if anyone is interested, feel free to shoot Chris a message or myself, and we'd be happy to sort of schedule that with you, because I think this is the time when GCs are looking to help to support each other, looking for questions and hoping to get answers. So if any of you is willing to do that, that would be really a big thing for the rest of the community.
Yes, that I'm so glad you mentioned that. I meant to. So we're going to call that the GC Innovation Showcase. I think that's the working title. And what we really want to do is celebrate those general counsel that are innovators, that are making changes. We're obviously not looking for any corporate confidential material,
Yep.
just high level takeaways and 5 to 10 minutes, very low time commitments. We're also happy to seek, if you have a vendor who's really thought was great and you think we should have in our vendor community, let us know that too, because it's a very, as that one slide shows, there's a dizzying array of vendors, and we're always interested in endorsements from GCs on particular vendors and how they see that vendor fitting into the legal ecosystem. So thanks everybody. Hope to see you next week, and I'm gonna stop recording now and hope to see you next week on GC Casual Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody. Have a good
Thank you,
weekend.
everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone, take care.
Bye.